living in Kochi and married to a Kerala man. Jennifer strides and bridges both cultures. She is here today with her friend Sarah Rooster to talk us about how we need to be thinking globally while working locally. Jennifer Kumar, CEO, Authentic Journeys.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I know it's a little early on a Saturday. When you work late on Friday, you probably want to sleep in, right? So thanks for coming bright and early. And like I was introduced, I'm Jennifer Kumar, and I'm from the US, and Sarah is with me. She's from Belgium. So today our topic is working locally, but thinking globally. So as I start off, I'd like to ask a question to you. So did you know that I think, or in general, many people should think that Indians, many of you sitting here today, have some of the hardest jobs in the world? I see some of you smiling when I ask that question, because you know, right? So the reason I'm saying this is because you're working locally, but having to think globally. So the context, how do you build a context with the foreign counterparts while sitting in India and maybe never going abroad or never meeting a foreigner? So for instance, if I'm in the US, it's a little easier for me to get a context of a foreigner because America is made up of foreigners, right? So even if I never leave the US, if I go to New York City, if I go to Los Angeles, even if I go to Rochester, New York, where I'm from, there's foreigners from all over the world. Lots of Indians, Chinese, Africans, from different African countries, South Americans. If I want to learn about a foreign culture, I just have to open my door and go outside and meet somebody from that country. But in India, you don't have that luxury as much. Most of the foreigners who come, especially to Kerala, don't live here. I'm an oddity, right? I'm a weirdo. I'm a weirdo because I'm a foreigner living in India. Especially Kerala, there's not many. But it's a good position. I get a lot of experience. So, on that note, we're going to talk about 3 topics today. And the first topic is about context. Making the context with your client. The second topic is going to be language, and that will be handled by Sarah. And then I'll come back in to discuss the third topic. And then we will wrap up the session for today. So when we think about context, there is lots of ways to think about context. I'm going to start with a high-level context, a building activity, and Sarah will talk more about the language context part of things. So when we are talking with a client, even in our own culture, what we think as the service provider is going to be different than what the client wants and the end user or the customer wants. It doesn't matter. But here, most of you working with foreign clients have an additional challenge, correct? You have that cultural piece you might not quite understand. Vivek, your name, the name of your company is?
Catility. Catility.
Catility.
Yeah.
So we talked about banking with Fidelity. So let's take banking as an example for context building in today's seminar. So in India, banking has a certain context. In America, banking has a different context. So like Vivek was mentioning, some of the things might be copied from the West and tried to be applied in India, but it doesn't make sense. Likewise, if you were working with a banking company from the US, applying Indian banking doesn't work in the US all the time because people think about money different. They have different terminologies for it. They have different technologies to interact with money. So for instance, let's say you were working with a big bank in India like Citibank. Okay? Now let's say you were actually a customer service representative taking calls about credit cards. Now, credit card use in India is totally different than the US. But in your mind, you're thinking of it as an Indian because that's what you are, right? So that's the context you have. But now you're interacting with the client. Maybe sometimes you might be interacting with like a Citibank executive. So they have a certain mindset about money, a certain mindset about using credit cards. And then the end user, the person using the They also have a different way of interacting with that. For instance, Americans may use credit cards for everything. Every single thing we use a credit card. But India, you would be very, discriminatory about what you use that credit card for. So to go from the mindset of being more restrictive to more open with that credit is where your mindset would have to be if you were going to talk to customers using credit cards in the US. So from that context, we're going to move to the language. And I'm sorry I missed Sarah to introduce herself. She will introduce herself and take over the topic of language.
So hello, my name is Sarah. I come from Belgium. I arrived here in February and I stay until June. And in these 4 months, I will follow Jennifer for my internship in Belgium. I'm studying business psychology. It's a section that doesn't exist in India, but it's for training and coaching. And so that's where my interest for HR is. So today I will take a little session of business of English, native language versus non-native language, English versus non-native English. But I would like to start with a question that's very common as for Indians. Did you have breakfast? Yeah. Yes. When I say I have good breakfast, of which foods do you think? Rice? Bread? Okay. Does someone think about rice and gravy with beans? No. What do you have for breakfast this morning? Okay, yes. When I take breakfast in Belgium, Europe, we had toast bread with jam or Nutella and orange juice or coffee or tea. So I didn't think that it's common here in India to have breakfast like this. So that's a difference, a cultural difference. So the concept breakfast for me is different for you. So what the importance, like Jennifer said, is the situation, the concept is different. Like in your native language, I think it's Malayalam, you start with idioms, you know all the phrases, and you start to talk more small talk than when you talk in English. When you talk in English, you don't know all the phrases, you don't know the idioms, you don't know synonyms for words, you just know the words you learned in school, but you don't do small talk a lot, you go to the point because you feel not comfortable. Even English is not my native language. I speak Dutch at home in Belgium, so when I'm talking in English, I have to translate from Dutch to English, and sometimes I don't feel comfortable, so I just go to the point and say what I have to say. Also, words can have different meanings in different cultures. Like, for example, a hotel. In India, it's a place where you get chicken biryani, parota, chapati, but in Belgium, a hotel, and in Europe, also in the US, a hotel is a place where you rent a room to sleep when you get on holidays, when you have to travel. So that's different. Even I think you have everybody has US counterparts. When you have small talk with US clients, you can ask him for the weather. So like you ask, hi Richard, how is the weather in US? And he said, yes, it's really cold. What do you think is cold? Cold weather, 16 degrees for you, I think. But in Belgium, in US, cold weather is -4, 0, or 2 degrees. So you can ask it. You see, it's different concepts. Back to the language now. You can, like I said, the one word can have 2 different meanings. Also, the approach, how to direct, can be different. For example, my first mail to Jennifer, I write, Dear Jennifer. In Belgium, it's common to direct you to someone. But in the US, dear is too friendly, so I was too informal to Jennifer. We can also make mistakes, but it's good to make a mistake and to learn about it. Now I never do it again. It's not only the Indian people who have problems. On YouTube, there is a funny video about an Italian man who goes to America and he likes to order food in a restaurant. But he makes mistakes. The lady doesn't understand him with his accent and she gets really angry on the Italian man. You have to check it out, the video, you will find it. And so you see, it's not only Indians who have problems with the pronunciation or the words they use, but also European can have problems with it. So a good tip is to ask for it. When there is a communication problem, you can ask for it. Yes, I also asked Jennifer, oh, you never use dear. Is it not common in the US? You can ask for it, they will answer you. So that was a topic about native language and non-native language.
Thank you, Sarah. So, believe it or not, she only practiced for 10 minutes. She's amazing, right? So, I will now transition to the last section of our topic today, which is talking about transferable skills. So we're going to talk kind of regarding the old way versus the new way. Now this is an expansive topic, right? We can talk about it all day. We can have a conference just on this. In fact, I think they did in the NOCRA, I think it is. The NOCRA conference that came in January, the Kerala people who live abroad, they had a conference in Lake Meridian, and I think they talked about these things. I unfortunately missed that conference. So the so-called old way, which really isn't outdated but still continues, people leave India to work outside India and gain their education and or skills only abroad and find it very difficult to come back to India. Not just because of the culture difference, but the skills or the technology or the context of that work doesn't apply in India. However, with the new way, with all these companies that do different kind of outsourcing and offshoring, there's so many contexts in that work that even though it's being done in India, it's being done for Americans or British people or Australian people, and that context is not the same as if you're actually working with customers who are Indian. So I've worked with banks, I've worked with legal firms, I've worked with accountancy firms. All of these kind of firms are doing business with clients in the UK, Australia, Canada, etc. And the process of doing that business is totally different than in India, even though they are doing it in India. So if they want to be an accountant with an American company, and now they actually are living in India, of course, now if they want to move a job, to get a new job, they either would have to go to the US and get a job there, all the technical skills will be transferable, or they would have to take up like an Indian accountancy type of program and get those technical skills back, more localized. Back to the banking example. So if we go to the last slide, the transferable skills, as we have mentioned, even in the first talk by Joji, I believe, the most transferable skill of all is soft skills. Of course, the company wants you to have the technical skills, there's no doubt about it. But if you can convince people that you can talk and you can present and you can do things, you can manage people, you can manage information, you can manage everything, people will like that. Yes, you will still have a learning curve to learn the Indian way of doing things, even though you are in India and you are Indian, which is the irony. But once we get some of these skills under control, those you can get under control in India in any company and transfer them to another company. Because working with people in India is going to be similar, more similar than working with Americans in the US. That's a big culture gap. So I think I can wrap up today's session by saying I'm really impressed about how many people in India actually work with this global mindset without having much of a context. But you can build a context. Everyone can build a context. And it just takes time and patience, and as Sarah said, being open to asking questions, right? So thank you for your time today. I know we're at a loss of time for questions, but maybe I'll either meet you during networking, or you can always contact me. You can come to my website, authenticjourneys.info. There's always lots of good tips for how to interact with your Western counterparts, whether they're in the US or abroad, or they come to India also. And my email address is there too. So thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
I wish you a good